Good evening, televiewers on my Media Prime Television. We are on to Prime R. This evening we shall be looking at two very important topics which is making headlines in the country. We shall be debating on the issue of why African countries are not emerging 60 years after independence. And in the course of the second part of the program, we shall look at what is happening within the circle of political parties in the country, where several militants are being excluded from the party as a result of some indiscipline issues. Those are two topics that we shall be dwelling on this evening with our panelists who are already in the studio this evening. And we begin with the Communications Secretary to the CRM political party, Fah Elvis Tayon, who is with us in the studio this evening. Good morning, sir. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Lasha Kingsley. It's my pleasure making present here. Greetings to Your Royal Majesty, the phone of Gunoko Village as usual. Greetings to the phone of Baba Uwan, the phone of Bafanji, and the Royal Majesty, the paramount ruler of the Nguepi people in Limbe. You know, I incarnate also traditional values. That's why you see me moving alongside with those traditional personalities who have quite impacted much in my life as far as being close to tradition is concerned. But above all, greetings to the people of Mekuda and the Gudeka Limbe branch, where we've quite been doing our best too. So I think all in all, those who are listening to us, especially from the Gudeka branch in Limbe, we say greetings to all, each and everyone. And I say we'll try our modest contributions to contribute towards nation building, even if the kangaroo system in a confused manner in Yaoundé continues to play their foul game as they watch the African continent and Cameroon wallow in pains day in, day out.
Thank you for joining, sir. Equally with us in the studio is Mr. Nji Lucas, who is of the civil society. He's joining us this evening to talk on the two very important topics that we shall be treating. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, Kingsley. It's a pleasure to be on the panel with you. I find it so much joy meeting Fabrice Lena, whom I consider to be the young political leader whom a lot of young people have been talking with. They keep asking me who is he. I think tonight those who are watching will have so much pleasure to see him and to also listen to him speak. It's a pleasure to be with my friend and brother Alex Nguepi, whom a lot of persons have been asking me who is he, and I'm sure tonight they shall also know him too. Of course, I cannot stop without acknowledging the presence of my own big brother and a friend, Fah Elvis Tayon. He is somebody whom, whenever they see him, I remember when we went to Tico, they were asking me who is this man with the kangaroo man.
Okay, yeah. We shall be talking more in course of the program. And the people first, as he always brandished himself, Fabrice Lena is with us. He's the Secretary General to the Popular Action Party. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, Sir Lasha Kingsley. Good evening to my dear brothers who are here with me on the panel. Good evening to Africa. I want to shout out a special good evening to my brother in Nigeria, Mr. Apu Emmanuel. Also to my dear friend and political comrade in Zambia, Tashila Lungu, parliamentarian of Chasiwa constituency, and to Her Excellency Bogolo Kowendo in Botswana, to say good evening. We are talking about Africa today, and I believe that these young names and people I've called are really inspiring the African continent in their different capacities of leadership. Special good evening to militants of the Popular Action Party, to His Excellency Jan Denis Tabe, and all the new members of the Popular Action Party in Yaoundé 4 municipality that took over power on Saturday in the convention, and to all the young people who are wishing to join politics. This is the time and the opportunity for you to be part of the changing narrative of our country and continent. Special good evening to you. To my brother, Mr. Nji, I hope that our discussions is going to enrich our viewers of Prime R a noble program that is so unique of its kind. Thank you very much for having me as your guest, Mr. Lasha Kingsley.
Thank you too for accepting to be with us this evening. And Alex Nguepi is equally joining us. He is a defunct militant of the MRC political party. He's on suspension, but he is in his capacity, in personal capacity as a politician this evening. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the program.
Bonsoir. Bonsoir, mon cher Fah Elvis. Bonsoir au panel. Bonsoir, un bonsoir particulier à tous ceux qui nous suivent ce soir. Je vais surtout dire un bonsoir à mon cher petit frère Faustin Apollin. Je vais dire que Faustin Apollin, c'est mon petit frère qui a écopé de 5 ans de prison ferme du côté de Nguepi. Il est un sympathisant du MS à l'époque. J'ai manifesté avec lui le 22 septembre. Nous avons fait des vidéos demandant aux gens d'aller manifester. Malheureusement, Faustin Apollin a été identifié dans l'une des vidéos que j'ai faites avec lui au marché Permis Socket, demandant de manifester. Et suite à son arrestation, il a pris 5 ans, n'a pas pris 3 ans comme les militants et cadres du MRC ou comme certains communicants. Il a pris 5 ans alors que d'autres ont pris 2 ans. Donc, Faustin Apollin, qui n'était qu'un sympathisant, c'est cette personnalité, c'est ce petit frère-là qui me permet d'être encore debout aujourd'hui. Un bonsoir particulier également à Roméo. Roméo, c'est le Benskiner qui a manifesté, qui a organisé une sensibilisation au niveau du marché de la douche en 2020. Il a été arrêté une semaine plus tard du côté de Bépanda. Il a écopé de 3 ans, donc un bonsoir particulier à Roméo et surtout à ma très chère, une personne que j'affectionne dans le MRC, qui est comme ma maman, Maman Pilon. Maman Pilon, c'est la militante du MRC du côté des Boulevards, du Djaïlobo de Samilima. Elle était départementale du MRC, elle était invincée comme moi. J'ai été invincé dans le Sud, toujours par le docteur Oko, régional du MS pour le Sud, il faut que je le rappelle. Et voilà, elle est partie manifester, elle a quitté Samilima, là on est manifesté, elle a été arrêtée et envoyée en fou. C'est la seule militante, la seule prisonnière politique du MRC qui se trouve du côté d'un fou. Et avec Fewassi, Kemta, avec Webassi Pierre. Webassi Pierre, c'est le communal du MRC pour le Djaïlobo. Lui également, il a été arrêté. Donc, je dis ces personnes bonsoir parce que avant que je ne sois suspendu, le MRC, c'est des personnes avec qui j'ai cheminé et je n'ai pas encore démissionné du MRC. Donc,
okay, I will come back to you. We are not talking their political party.
No, j'arrive.
Yes. Just land. Can you land?
It's a long politics. We long politics. If you get into it, I'm not taking that in as a
politique. Je peux parler de toutes les formations politiques. Et j'ai réitéré, j'ai rappelé ce que j'ai eu à faire pour le camp j'étais encore. Quand je n'étais pas suspendu dans le MRC,
tu es en tant que l'homme expert. Tu maintiens ta position en tant que l'homme politique.
Vous n'avez pas d'ordre à me dire, monsieur Fah Elvis.
I will not accept
tu restes ça c'est clair.
Please.
Ne dis pas les choses au nom du parti. Tu n'es pas ici au nom du parti de MRC.
Pour chuter donc, en tant qu'homme politique, j'ai tenu à réitérer que avant que je sois suspendu, ce sont des personnes avec qui j'ai énormément d'estime. Encore ce matin, je causais avec l'un d'eux, ce matin, et donc je tiens à dire à ces personnes-là qui sont en prison de tenir bon, car leur combat est noble. Le combat que nous menons ensemble est noble. Merci.
Okay, thank you very much. Fah Elvis, just to let you guys know that we are not here to quarrel or argue or to talk your political party. We are here to talk two very important issues.
And as a professional, his presentation must move as I see on the example. If you get into the party, I will not take it lightly, Mr. Presentation.
It is understood. Elvis, it is understood.
Okay, let's
keep start. Elvis, let's start with the first topic. I will not accept that you disrespect this very, very important platform. Let's begin with it. Please, Elvis, let's begin with the first topic. We are looking at why Africa has not developed or has failed to emerge 60 years after independence. What accounts for this trend 60 years after independence?
Well, the first issue has to do with the choices of those who were put in place at the early stage of the independence. In that case, we might not really blame the Africans because as baby and naive as all of us Africans were, the concept of democratization, the concept of leadership from the onset in the early 60s was not part and parcel of our culture.
Yes.
So we were used to the monarchical system. where we understood that by acclamation and by the customs and traditions, some persons could lead us, like our traditional rulers and adverse decisions. Now, with the advent of the periods of the colonization, that later on gave birth to independence. First, that era was for the fact that most of the populace that took part in putting in place the leaders shortly after independence were not very versed with the system. You will bear with me that democracy is a borrowed system of leadership, which we have today.
Yes.
Now, the second point of it is that for the few who were put in place, another controversy came in. The few persons who were seemingly working as per the aspirations of the fellow Africans that they governed were not loved by the colonizers. First, you must bear in mind that the term independence was a smokescreen independence given accorded to us by the West because of the pressure that mounted at that time, caused by the few elites who had acquired Western education and came back with pressure groups across the African continent. So because of that, Africans were forced to get what we call half-baked independence, unprepared independence, because the West or the colonizers were not willing. So in order to keep things under control, they decided to say, okay, let us pretend as if we have given them independence while we still hold them on the other hand. And that explains why when the status quo was put in place, the few African leaders who wanted to become so intelligent by not working to the whims and caprices of the colonialists were booted out of the game. Andre Marimbida is there, Thomas Sankara is there. All of these, we call them nationalists who worked for the interests of the people. But at the same time, the West, on realizing that they had relinquished part of the power or partial power, were forced now to use close associates of the same persons, following their gullibility, following their love for whatever material, had to use them, just like what we find with the present court case that is going on concerning the death of Thomas Sankara. Now, if you look at all of this, it is true, Compaoré takes life imprisonment and all the like, but it is to tell you that some persons who were close aides to these persons were now used to counteract their powers because they were fast going than the way the West had expected. So if you look at all of this, coupled with the bundles of trash educational system accorded to us. When I say bundle of trash educational system, we were accorded the education of assimilation. Now in this education, you will not explain. How do you explain to me that I spent time reading European history, Manchurian crisis, Japanese aggression, World War I, French monarchy, Bourbon monarchy, and all the like? You ask yourself, what was the importance of that trash of history I studied? You can't tell. But even coming back to those who took part, who took time to write our own historical developments in Africa, many of them had to butcher or doctor the history. And that's why you see constantly most Africans, the new Africans, the Renaissance Africans, are beginning to rewrite their history as it's supposed to be. Because even what was put in place was doctored and was not giving us the real picture of the African continent. So if you put all of this together, coupled with the fact the center self-ness, the aspect of organism, tribalism, some of these things have been witnesses.
But African countries are not the only countries that were colonized. We have other countries in Europe and other parts of Asia, but they are doing well.
Perfectly well.
Is our own case different?
Our case is the way it is, as I said, because of the mechanism put in place. The foundation that was laid determined what we harvest now. In the ancient society, the foundation was not built the way it was. The white man tried to implant his own system with a weak foundation, and by so doing, they could easily uproot the foundation and they could implant theirs. Now, how do you explain, for example, that you are on the African continent and the time that civilization started in Egypt, but Egypt is a developing country, whereas Korea is a developed country. China itself has emerged from developing country and moving towards developed countries. So it is to tell you that the strings that were attached to our colonial independence is working against us. If you go to China, as I tell you, for example, what they did, because the foundation of the West was not having a grip on the Chinese culture, the Chinese could easily come out of it because they had to invent their own systems of communication. For example, the Facebook people talk about here, you don't find it in China. If you go to Russia, they have their own social media network. Because in these areas, they knew that if they do not put in place these systems to block the westernization into their areas, it will become an aspect of colonization. And if you look at the world wars in our country, in the world today, Russia, Ukraine, and all the like, it stems from what we call the transfer of cultures into Africa. So Africa into the world at large. So Africa is a victim because the foundation that we had was a wrong foundation. Probably before the end of the program, we're able to suggest how to come out of this quagmire. Thank you.
Mr. Angie, Lucas, I come back to you. How independent are African nations? Are we really independent? We talk about independence 60 years on. Are we really independent?
I want to begin with looking at this topic from 1884. I think it is very important for Africans to know this, and it's very important for the viewers to know this. If you look at the agreements which we had in 1884, where Congo itself was thrown into the hands of the Westerners as a piece of meat in the pack of dogs, you will realize that all the things which were agreed in that particular Berlin conference, they restricted Africa from getting certain things. So if you talk about Africa's development, from the day the colonialists understood what was beneath Africa, you're talking about the gold, the mineral resources and the rest, they put up a plan immediately on how to get this forever. Coming back to the late 50s and 60s, where African countries began fighting for their independence, we have two classes of Africans whose independence were given. And if you look at this class of Africans, you will realize that the independence they have and the development which they have, they are relatively very different if you were to go and divide Africa within these four cardinal points. If you move up to the north, you will realize that the Northern Africa had her independence from her colonialist or from the colonial master through wars. And most of the countries that had their independence through wars, you would bear with me that they are far better off than those who had their independence through negotiations. Now, when you come down to most of these African countries who had their independence through negotiation, besides those who had their independence through war, it ended up on the table of negotiation. Of course, you should not forget that the whole cause of this so-called independence was coming from countries that were not interested in colonialism. And these countries that were not interested in colonialism, like America, they saw it and they thought it wise that it was only good to release these people because they have seen what was indeed not good within this. If it were left for Europe, the Europeans never had the minds to liberate Africans.
So are you telling us that because of our resources or what they later on discovered?
Definitely. So the resources in Africa is the major reason why Africa's independence and underdevelopment, you see it the way it is. So those who had this independence during this period, there were several negotiations. I want to take the case of Cameroon, where it is widely known that before the independence of Cameroon, André Marine Binda knew that he was going to be the president. But when President Amadou Ahidjo went to France, where certain agreements were reached with the Elysee Palace, which was not as it was supposed to be, at the end of the day, our independence was given. And you could hear certain things featuring such as our economy should be decided by these same guys, our military should be decided by these same guys, our educational system should be decided by these same guys, which these things which they are deciding for us are the same things which they had highlighted in 1884 in Berlin. And you should not forget that in 1884, it was said categorically clear that Africans should not be given the opportunities to understand technological know-how, which is the bedrock or which is the foundation of development. If you talk about development, you are talking about that.
But now that we know, why are we not...
talking about now that we know, there is another set of institutions that came in. This is what I want you to know. In 1944, in Bretton Woods in the United States of America, where the IMF and the World Bank was born, that was the foundation they had to lay to remove their physical presence from Africa in the name of colonialism or colonization into colonizing Africa in another form. I want you to know that as the program unfolds, I shall be telling you and the televiewers how these organizations, they are holding Africa from developing. Before you go to get the mic, please, I want you to know that if you look at the whole concept of these Bretton Woods institutions, you talk about the IMF and the World Bank and the ADB. Of course, you should not forget that the ADB has a representative from the West, is a permanent representative from the West, who is like the watchdog to observe what exactly is happening within Africa, whereas we do not have that in the European Central Bank.
In our African Union,
Good.
we have representatives coming from other European countries.
Exactly.
And the rest.
So whereas we do not have the same persons in the European Union or the European Bank, so to say. Now, when you put these things together, you will realize that the Britainhood has as objective to liberate these countries that were plagued by this war by 1945. And onto Africans, if you must have recalled, the interest rate which they give money to the Europeans and other countries, it is not the same with Africa. Like I said, we shall be looking into this deeply to see exactly where this is coming from. But that notwithstanding, it doesn't mean that Africa is not going to develop, because we now have young groups of politicians like Fabrice Lena and many other on the platform whom you would get to see the reason why Africa must develop. I have always been saying this. If we want to develop Africa, we first of all need to begin by giving the people political education. Political education is the key to develop your nation, because every other thing shall be decided by policies that will be made, and it will not be made by ordinary people but politicians who are active. So I think it will be great for us to have that.
Alex Nguepi, we want to talk about this issue of leadership, poor leadership in Africa. What accounts for this poor leadership that we have in Africa?
Oui, bonjour. Je tiens à rappeler que ce qui se passe concernant le leadership africain, et surtout ce qui est né après les indépendances, parce que je crois que c'est ça que rapporte la thématique 60 ans après, pourquoi l'Afrique
ne se développe pas.
Il faut identifier les raisons. Nous avons d'abord un échec de vision démocratique au niveau du continent africain. Nous avons un échec de vision économique. Nous avons un échec dû au déni culturel. Nous avons également un échec dû au fait que l'indépendance a été accordée à ceux qui n'ont pas demandé. Je vais commencer d'abord par le déni culturel. C'est-à-dire, quand l'Afrique, des États africains deviennent indépendants à partir de 1954, pour la plupart, mais la grande vague a été entre 1960 et 1966. Alors, les Africains ont péché par continuer à s'exprimer en français, en anglais, en espagnol, en portugais, c'est-à-dire n'ont pas su valoriser leur langue, parce qu'il faut dire que la langue est le premier élément culturel d'un peuple. Si on veut mieux vous coloniser, on vous fait parler la langue d'autrui. Donc, on va vous obliger à mettre dans votre... on va assimiler votre culture à celui d'autrui. Donc, ça a été l'une des premiers échecs. Je tiens à rappeler que lors de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, lorsque le plan Marshall a été mis sur pied, ce que les Américains ont dit au continent européen pour rembourser le plan Marshall, ils ont dit, laissez nos cultures entrer vers vous. Laissez nos films inondés.
The question is, why the poor leadership?
J'arrive.
The things that you are listing accounts for the poor leadership that we have in Africa today?
J'arrive. C'est pour ça qu'on donc, quand ils ont dit cela, donc, les Africains n'ont pas compris, parce que les Américains ont su que pour mieux coloniser un peuple, il faut coloniser à partir de la culture. Donc, les Africains n'ont pas su adapter leur culture par rapport aux nouvelles exigences mondiales. Et ça a eu toutes des répercussions que nous avons aujourd'hui, que ce soit l'art, que ce soit la langue, que ce soit nos traditions. Nous sommes allés dans la perdition. Et du coup, les leaders africains étaient en principe nos chefs, ceux qui se trouvaient dans les royaumes. Vous voyez un peu. Donc, et ceux-là qui avaient besoin d'indépendance, ils n'ont pas eu accès à l'indépendance. C'est-à-dire, si je prends le cas du Cameroun, ceux qui ont réclamé l'indépendance du Cameroun a été l'UPC. Mais l'indépendance a été accordée à l'UNC. Alors, l'UPC avait un programme, avait des leaders purs et nets qui savaient comment implémenter l'indépendance pour le cas du Cameroun. Et la même chose s'est répétée dans plusieurs États africains. Du coup, les leaders qui sont sortis au soir des indépendances étaient des leaders néocoloniaux. Des leaders néocoloniaux, ces leaders-là qui ont passé le temps à vanter les mérites de l'Occident, et ça continue jusqu'à aujourd'hui. C'est-à-dire qu'il n'y a pas eu une cassure, c'est-à-dire que jamais les pays africains n'ont véritablement eu des leaders qu'ils méritaient. Des leaders qui devaient promouvoir le Made in Africa. Et maintenant, par la suite, vous avez l'échec démocratique, c'est-à-dire l'Afrique a voulu implémenter sa forme de démocratique à elle. C'est-à-dire l'Afrique a fait comme si la démocratie était un concept pas universel, comme si chaque État pouvait
before
adapter.
the democracy came, we had our own institutions.
Non, mais ça nous a amené où? Ça nous a amené.
Ça
nous a amené où? Voilà la question. Nous avons ces empires. Pourtant, c'est pas empêché qu'on soit colonisé. Est-ce que vous suivez? On va dire, nous avons toutes ces choses-là. Pourquoi avons-nous été colonisés? Pourquoi n'avions pas nous réussi à inventer la roue, à inventer la télévision? Pourquoi c'est venu d'ailleurs? Voilà le fond du problème. Nous avons tout. Donc, c'est pour dire que cette vision également a été un échec. Donc l'échec sur le plan démocratique, c'est-à-dire les Africains ont refusé la démocratie, ils ont perverti la démocratie à autre chose et ils ont plus ou moins accepté les régimes dictatoriaux et ces régimes-là n'ont pas rendu de grands services au continent africain. Maintenant, l'une des véritables choses qui s'est passée, c'est que au sortir des indépendances, les Africains ont commis le plus grand crime qu'un État puisse commettre.
Comment?
L'économie. L'économie a été la chose qui a plombé les États africains. C'est-à-dire, en 1960, les États africains avaient presque le même niveau que Singapour, que la Chine, que le Vietnam qui a été détruit. Mais comment se fait-il que 60 ans plus tard, les États africains soient en train de demander de l'aide au Singapour, à la Chine? Comment se fait-il que les États africains soient en train de demander de l'aide?
Is it not the issue of the bad leadership we are talking
Bien
about?
sûr, bien sûr, tout ça va ensemble. Je vous ai dit que pour les leaders, l'Afrique n'a jamais eu les leaders que l'Afrique a voulu.
Okay.
C'est-à-dire que chaque fois qu'on a eu des leaders, nos leaders ont été des leaders néocoloniaux. C'est-à-dire qu'à aucun moment l'Afrique a eu un leader qui est issu des urnes, qui est là parce que les populations l'ont choisi et que ce leader qui va prendre le pouvoir et qui a été choisi par les populations, quand les populations en auront assez, vont changer contre notre leader. Jamais l'Afrique n'a connu cela. Les Africains ont eu des leaders qui viennent lier la messe du colon. Donc cette pauvreté de leaders que nous avons est due à cela. Mais je dis, on aurait pu avoir ces mauvais leaders. Si seulement ces leaders-là avaient un tant soit peu pensé aux intérêts africains. L'intérêt africain, c'est que...
Il y a quelqu'un comme Muammar Gaddafi qui a essayé,
non, je vous ai parlé de dictateur. Pour moi, c'est un dictateur. J'ai été en Libye. C'est un dictateur. Moi, c'est un dictateur. Donc,
mais ces citoyens vivaient bien, n'est-ce pas?
Du point de vue du Camerounais, ils vivaient bien.
Non,
mais
ne dis pas Camerounais.
J'arrive. Pour quelqu'un qui a fait la Libye comme je l'ai fait en Libye, j'ai été en Libye en 2003. Entre 2003 et 2005, j'ai fait la Libye, j'ai fait l'Égypte. Jusqu'à le Maghreb. Je parle un peu même arabe. Quand vous êtes à Benghazi en 2003, à Benghazi, c'est une ville contestataire. C'est une ville d'opposition, Benghazi. Maintenant, à Benghazi, c'est vrai que la lumière était gratuite, les maisons étaient accessibles aux Libyens. C'est vrai que vous allez dans les magasins, vous avez facilement du riz. Quand vous êtes Libyen, vous sortez votre carte.
If you compare the situation
laissez-moi m'exprimer sur la question. On m'a posé une question, n'est-ce pas? J'ai eu la chance d'être dans ce pays-là. Maintenant, comme vous voyez dans le Libyen, par rapport à nous, l'Africain, le Camerounais, où l'État est absent, où l'État ne paye pas l'école, où ils n'ont pas de bourse, alors que le Libyen à la maison, il a la bourse. Mais le Libyen, par contre, par rapport à ses richesses, la Libye avait 5 millions d'habitants en 2003. 5 millions d'habitants. Les Libyens produisaient autant de pétrole que...
That's why I'm asking you that. Compare Libya today.
Laissez-moi m'exprimer. Je vais arriver sur la comparaison.
No, just compare.
Vous m'avez posé quelque chose. J'ai dit quelque chose.
Just compare Libya today.
Je dis, n'est-ce pas?
Yes.
Vous m'avez posé.
Libya 2003.
Je vais arriver sur la comparaison. Pourquoi j'ai dit qu'Alpha était un dictateur? Laissez-moi dire pourquoi j'étais un dictateur. Ils vous ont dit que le Libyen, c'était 5 millions d'habitants en 2003. Les Libyens. OK? Les Libyens... il faisait la comparaison avec le Qatarien, avec l'Émiratien, avec le Saoudien. C'est-à-dire quand vous voyez un Libyen, il dit, bon, ok, nous mangeons cadeau, on a tout ça gratuitement, mais nous voulons les immeubles comme l'Arabie Saoudite. Nous voulons avoir le même standing de vie, parce que le niveau de vie, le pétrole que la Libye produisait, c'est la même quantité de pétrole que le Qatar produisait. Vous comprenez? Donc, par rapport à leur richesse, ils estimaient être délaissés. Maintenant, l'Africain subsaharien, que l'État a abandonné son rôle, ne pouvait qu'envier la Libye. Donc il faut un moment se mettre à la place du Libyen, se dire comment est-ce que le Libyen se sentait. Quand vous savez, comme dans Libye en 2003, l'Égyptien était maçon en Libye. Pourtant, l'Égypte était plus développée. Le Marocain était peintre en Libye. Les femmes marocaines, c'est elles qui faisaient la prostitution en Libye. Pourtant, le Maroc était mieux développé. Le Tunisien, il venait par Libye. L'Algérien venait travailler en Libye. L'économiste libyen était l'Algérien. Le commerçant libyen était le Libanais et le Syrien. Pourtant, le Libanais se sentait mieux que chez lui. Donc, si on se met dans la peau de l'Africain et qu'on va parler de la Libye, c'est normal qu'on va dire que Kadhafi est un dieu. Parce que nous, l'Afrique subsaharienne, nous n'avons rien de nos États. Donc, je veux donc dire que...
Just land.
Oui, pour chuter, même qu'on m'avait fait dire autre chose, je veux donc dire que l'Afrique a eu un problème de leader. À aucun moment, nos leaders ont pensé aux pays africains. Et l'une des choses que nous n'avons pas eu en Afrique, c'est qu'à aucun moment, les leaders africains ont parlé d'économie. À aucun moment, nos leaders africains ont parlé d'indépendance économique. Parce que même Kadhafi n'a pas parlé d'indépendance économique. Le Kadhafi ne posait qu'une seule richesse, le pétrole. À quel moment est-ce que Kadhafi a varié son économie? En aucun moment.
Okay, Alex. Fabrice Lena, we're talking about adaptability to democracy as a governance system. We still have a problem, African copying and pasting what is, what happens in Western world.
Yes, I will go a little bit in a different perspective from what the other panelists have already said. I think Africa is a great continent. We have had great men, and we are still having great men and women. Meanwhile, we've also have people who have tried to plunge the continent to that underdevelopment we are talking about. I have personally taken time to study the African continent, maybe by documentaries, by reading books, by other means of trying to understand my continent, and I've come to realize that it all depends on the style of leadership of who is in power. And we cannot say that African continent is completely underdeveloped. No. There are countries in Asia and America that their GDP...
But Alex just said a while ago that Africa or African countries have never had...
That's why I'm saying that
I'm looking at it in a different perspective.
That
they deserve. Is that not a sweeping statement?
I'm looking at it in a different perspective.
No African country has ever had a leader that they deserve.
I'm looking at it in a different perspective, in the sense that, like I said, Africa has had great men and Africa has had great women. But the question is that we've had also people who have dragged the continent behind. If you look at Africa, some African countries comparable with some American countries, some Asian countries, some of the African countries are doing quite great. But the index or barometer of measurement varies. Politics, economy, maybe culture. There are so many other factors that account for the stability of a country and a continent in terms of other countries. When we look at, I want to take specific cases. A country like Congo, that has had first and second civil wars, the first Congo War and the second Congo War. What is the cause? The bad leadership of Mobutu Sese Seko. Because when Mobutu had the opportunity to meet with the nationalist leader Patrice Lumumba, you see that it is an African who conspires to kill another African who had a great vision for his country. Because in the independence of DR Congo, Lumumba gave an inspiring speech of trying to cut all neo-colonial attempts by Belgium and France into DR Congo, given that it is the diamond, one of the richest diamond country in Africa. And Mobutu came up to appear like a stooge, and the West took him, brandished him. He wrote Congo for 32 years, and immediately as he stepped down, Congo was plunged to a series of civil wars because of the guy's style of leadership. So there, we can all judge that Mobutu was a bad African leader who took a country from a nationalist leader and plunged the country to a series of civil wars. Because when Desiré came up, the problems were too much for him to handle. And Desiré was murdered in 2002, and his son came up, tried to make some peace agreements that it still ensuing up to today, even with Tshisekedi. And that is to tell you that his son, to a certain extent, for me, I judge him to be a good leader, someone who has tried to negotiate, to make sure that there is peace, because Congo is one of the countries in Africa that has seen civil war of more than 5 million people dead, yeah. And with all kind of crimes that we can talk about.
How are the leaders to blame in this situation? Is it not because of the riches of Africa? Because all these most of the countries play in this war?
No. I don't want to. In the continent where we are functioning, there are 3 stages that Africa has gone through: pre-colonial, colonial, post-colonial. After independence, African leaders, some African leaders took it upon themselves to liberate themselves from, and they did. Ahmed Sekou Touré did with Guinea Conakry. He tried as he could, even though with all the chains and whatsoever, he tried what he could. The first Zambian president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, the guy in 1991, when he was defeated in the presidential election, the West offered him to stay in power so that he could continue to do their whims. He refused. He stepped down that he wants his country to go in a constitutional democracy. And now his country is enjoying relative peace because of that constitutional democracy. He said it that if at one point in time he had accepted to stay further in power, his country would have been plunged to chaos. So me, I'm not there to go and say the West, in as much as the West is coming, you, the leader, what are your policies? What is your vision? What is your decision? How are you governing your people? What is your target? It is not whether you have chosen dictatorship or you have chosen democracy, Mr. Lasha. It depends on the concept of the Homo sapien, the human beingness. Why am I saying this? Morocco is ruled by a monarchy. King Hassan II, when he took over leadership in Morocco, the guy did not have much knowledge on politics, but he was a strong agriculturalist. The guy was very powerful in agricultural policies, and that's why he made Morocco the food basket of Maghreb Africa, and that he succeeded in that domain. And Morocco now exports fish and all these other green spices to the whole of Africa and beyond. But they are operating under monarchy similar to that of UK, but a little bit stronger in terms of concentration of power. But they are doing well. Morocco is not like the other Somalia, Ethiopia, DR Congo, or Cameroon that is practicing feigned democracy. So it's not about the style of leadership there, but it's about the leader and his concept of leading his people to a vision.
You are saying that democracy should be thrown into the dustbin? Is it what
democracy has worked for some countries and it has failed for some countries. It is the president and the people of a country that define the style of leadership that befits their country.
But every day, people in Cameroon, they say, oh, the ruling party is undemocratic. They are not practicing democratic principles. You guys are the one of the opposition shouting every day. And then you stand here to tell me about
Mr. Lasha, the truth is that when you look at countries like Cameroon, the only system of governance that can work is democracy. Why? Because look at the historical background of Cameroon. Look at the population composition. Look at the context. Look at the cultural diversity. In Cameroon now, no other system can work because first, for me and Mr. Nguepi, who is from French background, from English background, to communicate, it must be, I'm communicating English, he's communicating French. There is already a problem of division at the level of language. If I am not apt enough to understand him in that French, there is already a problem of division among ourselves.
So let me learn language. We can take a national language.
That's where I wanted to come. That in as much as we have not yet even reached that level of national language, regional language, languages that could put us together, you cannot talk about other forms of government because it will not work. It will not work. Okay. Monarchies succeed because the people have similar identity. The population is less complex. The number of tribes are few, and that is why it succeeds. And in other places, it doesn't succeed because the people have a lot of diversity. You get it? Yeah, and that is why, and that is why a style of governance, form of governance, and the kind of
most
governance.
African countries have this problem of adaptability when it comes to democracy. They copy and paste something that is not working for them.
Yeah. Do I even say it's copy and paste? It's not copy and paste. In that aspect of copy and paste, I will go back to where we will be talking about individual interests of such a leader going beyond the collective interests of who those persons are leading. Because if people like Samora Machel, Kwame Nkrumah, let me talk of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Julius Nyerere, if those guys wanted to go the way that these present 1990 presidents are going, it will have even be more chaotic.
Okay.
You get it? But now, they decided to say that at the end of my mandate, I give it. And now their country is enjoying it. Now, the 1990 presidents have come in, the 1990, that's the period of multi-party in Africa. And all presidents that have come after the multi-party period have used politics to divide and rule their people, to maintain power, grip power, retain power, and that is where the underdevelopment is coming from. Okay, but like I said, since the last decade, from the 2000s, 2010, recently, we have been seeing young and vibrant African leader emerging with a vision of making Africa develop, like John Pombe Magufuli.
Okay,
like Goodluck and the other guys that have been trying to retract their country from the grip of that kind of not sharing power and staying in power ad infinitum and so on and so forth. Our country, Cameroon, which is a typical example of a failed system of adapting democracy, is one that can be used as a microcosm of explaining failed democracy in Africa, underdevelopment, poverty, war, and chaos.
Are you sure you are the Secretary General of a political party? Tomorrow you are in power and somebody say these things that you are saying here. Are you sure?
I am one of the highest person that is open to criticism, Mr. Lasha. Politics is not sentiment. You're governing people, and people are waiting results.
Okay.
I am even very happy now, as the Secretary General of Popular Action Party, for people to come up with criticism. You have failed to do this, you have failed to do this. Because if people do not watch other people, laws were brought to the society because man could not respect simple engagements.
Okay.
If criticisms are existing, it is for human beings to adjust, to stand still. Because if we were not saying these things we are saying, Mr. Lasha, you will not even have programs like this.
Okay.
Yes.
Fah Elvis, let us look at the role of religion in Africa mix. Religion, many people have seen religion as a move or a means that the white man used in taking away strong institutions in Africa.
That is a very serious issue. Because sometimes we ask several questions as the role religion is playing in the advanced developments of the African continent. I would tell you that if you go to Sweden, the population that goes to church in Sweden are not up to 5%, but they are on track. If you go to the other Scandinavian countries, they are on track. They are not as religious as we carry on ahead. The main issue here is that everything was carefully worked and crafted by the colonialists for the aspects of colonial slavery, which works well for us. Sometimes you would go to Singapore or China and you find a pre-nursery school child who is trying to learn technology. On the African continent, they want him to become a prophet overnight, as early as he is. And the parents are telling you, I want you to become a prophet, a serious prophet. So how do you expect that with this kind of scenario, we will not continue to be begging? Now, most of the times I tell people, because I spoke to some prophets of late, that was last week, and some told me that the devil is using me. I said, no. You can't tell me the devil is using me because we are looking at practicalities. If you go to Northwest region, precisely where I'm coming from, and some part of the Southwest region, every Monday is World Prayer Day in all the churches, Pentecostals.
Yes.
Full service holds on that day because it's the day they call Ghost Town Days. And these full services, there was a service on Sunday, you pay tithe. Offering was offered. There was a service on Friday prayer night. The same was done. There was a service on Wednesday, we call it midweek service. Offering was done, was given, at the same time tithe was issued. And on Monday again, there is another world prayer day for peace, which goes in the same scenario. And I begin to ask myself, with the way we have been brainwashed in this aspect of religiosity, I would have loved this topic with some of these men of God here, so that we should tell them, point blank, that they are chewing more than they can swallow and helping to enslave us more. Do you know that with the aspect of religiosity, with the portions in the Bible about forgiveness and all the like, these aspects help to put us more into trouble? How do you tell me that a kangaroo government puts me into trouble by not giving me adequate employment despite the fact that I've studied, and by telling me that the future, the youth are the future of tomorrow? I've already about the youthful age. I heard that grammar before. Gray hair is on me now. I'm still hearing the grammar till today. And the hoodlums in Yaoundé are still recounting the same story till now. And when you go to the churches that harbor these criminals, The pastors are there pampering them and saying, no, let's forgive. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give to God what belongs to God. Meaning you need not even question on the poor portions in the Bible that tells you about respect your authorities. And if you look at it, these churches have instead helped to plunge us into wilderness of the highest order. Pastors, hear very well. Sometimes I will tell you that I like Apostle Johnson Suleiman,
Tone down Fah Elvis,
who takes a violent approach. I got one of his videos of recent, and he said, no, if any Christian in his church beats up the wife and the matter is brought to him, he will take permission from the police and try that person. In other churches, they will pamper you. No, you know, follow the Bible says anything is except divorce, except the aspect of unfaithfulness, right?
Yes.
If not, you have no right to divorce. You stay there and they beat you till. Because religion has played on the mentality of people. Many are undergoing that agony. And I tell you that any kangaroo government that does not move well, religion is supposed to be at the forefront. How did apartheid come about? Of course, we know the role that Bishop Desmond Tutu played. I mean, as far as the church is concerned, in South Africa, in fighting apartheid. Now, these are what we call enlightened churches. I tell these pastors and prophets who gallivant every day, doing grammar and animating on altars left to right. But how do you explain to me that an evil doer is administrator in your church? You don't even have the single courage to call him in your office.
No, if the pastor might have been doing so.
They don't do, sir. They don't do, sir. I know these pastors. They don't do. You know what? Watch them when they invite these guys for projects committees in the churches. I will be calling men of those churches if the worst come to the worst to tell you what they do. That I come to a church and some persons have particular seats there. And if you go to churches in Yaoundé and Douala, those big churches, if I get a little bit out of hand, I'll call the names because I don't want to be afraid of any church and the church will not do me anything. And they give them full seats wherever they are. And you know this man is an evil doer. You know his deeds. But the pastor preaches the day of the project committee or the project.
So are you saying that the churches are not supposed to exist in Africa? They have contributed tremendously to the underdevelopment in Africa.
Let me say this without water in my mouth. The churches have helped to keep us where we are. Why don't you think that there's a portion of the Bible, suffer not the wish to live but to die? What does it mean? If I have a leader who is getting me not moving, I should be able to tell him point blank, this is how it is.
But leaders are chosen by God now.
Good. The Bible says leaders are chosen by God, but not all of them move with the wings and caprices of God throughout. Yeah. You could be chosen by God from the beginning and along the line. What happened in Nebuchadnezzar? You will say he was chosen by God, but when he derailed, he was punished and he was now creeping. Not so. So, men of God don't move to this level. The rest of the leaders were chosen by God. Because what I said, the crusade we are taking against bad leaders on the African continent was supposed to be championed by men of God. If they were honest in real terms. Yeah. How do you tell me that I don't have the Spirit of God as they claim? As they claim because they say they're men of God, they're protected. Lasha, this matter is serious.
Men of God are called, they are called by God. There are some people who call themselves as men of God. Let's
just go to those who are called by God. Let's leave those who are not called, who call themselves.
For example, let Christian Cardinal Ntumi try.
Yes. Excellent. Those are exceptional cases.
Yes.
If I tell you about situations, I'm talking about majority. Over 95% of these men of God have plunged us where we are. How do you explain to me, Lasha, that a man of God who says he's called by God with the Spirit of God is scared to talk to a politician, to a leader, than me, who is a common man? He is scared to go to prison. He is scared for any other aspect that could come as far as intimidation. But I sit there and I talk openly when I am supposed to be the one even scared because they say they have the Spirit of God that's supposed to protect them. Mm-hmm. Jesus did not take it lightly with the Roman government. Jesus was always categorical when he was not moving, and he gave them the raw gospel as it is. But because it is more of business, how do you explain to me that the richest empires in Africa are churches? And do you know why the governments do not give taxes to those churches? Because those churches have to calm down the minds of the people who are trampled upon by the bad leaders. That's why they will not give them taxes.
What is the way forward?
The way forward is that churches will start paying taxes. Hear very well. When they start paying taxes, they will know what it takes to live a real gospel life. There's one African country I'll be coming shortly, where even in Ghana, some of the churches were closed of recent.
Yes.
Thousands of churches were closed. And another communique was issued by the government. If you don't have what it takes to be a man of God, this issue of self-proclaimed prophets, a general overseer, apostles, and all the like, this is where it's plunging us into. Because we are in a church and the man will tell, I've seen a vision. This person will become this, the country will change. And nothing is changing. He's giving you hopes that it will change when he's lying. I can tell you that these churches have caused more damage. If I get into that topic, I see how they grow fat every day. They roll, they move in large cars. They have become business tycoons of the first order. That even Dangote, who does journey business, cannot measure up with, with most of these men.
Fah Elvis, who is to blame, these men of God or the people who brought religion to Africa?
My brother, two of them are to be blamed. The white man brought his religion and put his chapter there. Then the others who came in and went through education, they started to embrace it for the sake of money making, not for the sake of God. A genuine church of God will tell you that this leader, this governor, this SGO, you have done this wrong. This governor, this SGO, you have done this right. Because it should be two ways.
Now, we've had pastors.
It's not just
we've had pastors who have tried that. And
how many of them?
They were convocated to go and
good.
And
it is because the pastors are not willing to go through persecution. Lasha, these guys fear the government than me and you. Are they pastors?
But they have the Holy Spirit in them.
What's the Holy Spirit that a pastor cannot see the table and a corrupt geo is a full member of his cabinet and even an elder in the church? How do you explain that? And he knows. Because complaints come to him. Man of God, you know this geo has done this. Man of God, this minister has done this. I said, no, don't worry, I'll talk to him. I never thought he's going to talk to him. Envelopes changes hands.
Okay.
These things are real, though. These guys should not take us for fools. So they have destroyed the African continent. I think that, Lasha, I am not an antichrist. But I think that we're supposed to get into another African setup whereby we pull Africans to call a spade a spade. We'll be worshiping God. But while worshiping God, we should be building our mindset and building an aspect of education which goes a long way to put in place the aspect of industrialization. If we don't move in all of this, Lasha, we'll keep on hearing man of God, don't worry, God will take care, we'll pray, God will punish. It is this caution these guys say after they live all well. All of them are living well.
Okay, thank
all
you
of them are living very well.
I'll be coming back to you, Elvis.
Better go and come back, Lasha, because I'm still there for them.
Okay. Lucas, let's talk about lack of democratic principles in Africa, which has been blamed on the underdevelopment that we are having in Africa. Transparency, accountability is also, contributing to the underdevelopment that we have in Africa.
Yes, Kingsley, what you need to know is we have a whole lot of reasons. If you talk about this, you have
the democratic principles are not being respected.
Yes, of course.
If they say you to be in office for 5 years,
you would want to.
There are people who get in, change the constitution. Exactly. Democratic principles not being respected.
Yeah. Of course, we have that. What you need to know is that as a factor contributing to the underdevelopment of Africa, we have corruption, we have bad government policies. We have the educational system. When we talk about corruption, most of the leaders, once they ascend the throne in their countries, what they look at is the power given to them, and all what is meant for the country, they bring it to their own pocket and send it to their relatives. You have the other aspect of poor government policies. Of course, you should not forget that where there is no vision, the Bible says the people perish. Most of these guys, they don't have policies that would help to develop a country. It's not about how good you can speak. It isn't about that. What we are looking at here is we are trying to figure out policies that should help a country. And I think this is what politicians should have in their mind. And we also have the educational system. These are all problems. Now, when you talk about not respecting democratic institutions, I want to say that democracy has different way to be implemented with different countries. Yes, I understand that my brother here, Fah Elvis, the kangaroo man, looks at the church in a different perspective. But I want to say that the Bible says quite clear that God gives a leader to the people according to their heart. It is the reason I'm calling on young politicians like Fah and Fabrice Lena. If you hear me keep emphasizing on political education, I want you to know that political education is not all about telling the people to pick up their voters' card and go and cast that ballot in your name. It encompasses that you should be able to understand why you are electing that person, and you need to understand the institutions, the legislations that guide you in bringing the same persons to order. So when you look at all of this, it is but obvious that Africa needs democracy. We cannot deny that. But the democracy of Africa needs to be contextualized. I want you to know that what is killing us in Africa is we are not making good use of the people we have. Have you ever bothered yourself to know why we are not using the sociologist? If you ask most political parties, they will tell you, I'll tell you, there are no sociologists in their parties. And what you need to know is that sociologists and psychologists, these are persons you need within a political party in the quest to educate the people politically, because it is lack of political education. We have leaders in Africa whom we expect that they should be despotic when it comes to developing Africa, but rather they are despotic when it comes to embezzling from what they have to develop their country with. And so they use a lot of power on their people to squander what is made available for the nation's development. So not respecting the democratic institution, it is not something that is very new. America is operating on democracy. It is not the same with Britain. It is not the same with France. It is not the same with Belgium.
Those are countries, 200 years of
they have
democracy.
200 years of contextual democracy.
But we are just 50, 60 years
We are
old.
not just 50. This is another point where I have been saying it. Africa did not get her independence within that period you are looking at. Africa had been independent. It was simply that period that those guys decided to understand and bring to the war. Now, if I may ask you, of course, you may not be giving me the answer, but what you need to know is that at the time we were under these colonial masters, we did not stop developing our areas. If you go back to read how Europe underdeveloped Africa, you will understand that Africa had developed prior to the coming of the Europeans. And when they came, they understood that the only thing they would do is that they have to underdevelop this place such that you should depend on them. It is just like some of our politicians. They have decided that they will not develop certain areas such that whenever they come to these areas, whatever they say, you take it. We will give you a road, the people will shout, yes. When they come, we will give you this, the people will shout, yes. Not because the people do not have these things, not because they cannot have these things. It is because they have decided to enclave these areas for reasons best known to them. But what I want the televiewers to know is this. We have leaders in Africa who can lead us quite well. If you look at the Constitution of Cameroon, if you were to go back and put the 1996 Constitution in this country, what verbatim on the ground, you will realize that the country will be good. If we go back to look at the 1972 that was scrapped off, you will realize that the country will be good. So even with the 1996 Constitution, you have heard cases. Let me take the recent case of the Bamenda Regional Council, where their budget has been hijacked. Of course, you should not forget that the papers published that the Bamenda, the Northwest Regional Council, the budget has been hijacked. Now, you may want to ask yourself, what would be the reason? So when these things happen, they come in to puncture a moving democracy. So as much as we have persons in Africa who wants to get the continent democratized, you should not also forget that the democracy cannot be unique, because there isn't any unique democracy in the world. America has her own democracy. Uruguay has her own democracy.
Why are we not shaping our own in Africa? What's wrong with African countries?
The challenge is that the Africans are not yet educated when it comes to political issue. Now, let me tell you,
how can you say that we have big politicians who are heading big institutions?
It is not in that.
We have Christopher Formenien, who is heading an institution that we know is a reputable institution. We have other big guys who are heading democratic institutions. So how can you say what you are saying?
No, it isn't about those big names, right? But when I talk about political education, how many Cameroonian knows that no matter what happens, no matter how heavy-handed it will be meted on them, they should pick up their responsibility and bring their leaders to order. That is political education. And this is why the Americans, right, the Nigerians, the South Africans, and the others, you would not play with them. In order for Kagame to understand how good the democracy will work for his country, to develop his country, he had to reshape it. So you cannot take the American democracy word verbatim to put in Cameroon, because the sociological setup of Cameroon is not made up like that of America.
Yeah.
So you will crash. So what we need to do is that we have to take into consideration, like Fabrice said, that our multicultural nature is a reason for us to adapt a democracy that is going to help us live together and move together. And this democracy is not lacking. Okay. What is lacking is simply the goodwill. Yes. The moment we will come out of that shell where we have this bounty patriot, where we have this bounty nationalist, where we have the proxies of the West, because most of these guys are serving as proxies of the West. Yes. They are not operating for the interests of their own people. Rather, they are there serving the interests of where they are making their gains, putting it into their private pockets. And this is the bedrock of underdevelopment of Africa. Okay. The only thing we need to do at this point in time, we need to bring these leaders to order. And to bring these leaders to order, I am calling on the political parties on this platform today to take this and meet your people and let them know exactly what they need to be doing. Politics is not all about you thinking that if you are brought to jail, it means you did something wrong. No. Okay. You should not feel timid. If you have decided to politic or to do politics, then you should bear in mind that it goes beyond your freedom. Okay. It goes beyond your enjoyment. There is always a time for you to build. So the failed democracy which we are having in Africa, in most African countries, and the failed democracy which we have in Cameroon, it isn't that in our constitution you do not have these institutions in place. But what is happening here is that people have decided to incarnate the institution rather than the institution which it has to be for everybody. So whatever is being said, it is often said in the name of this person, or in the name of that person, or in the name of this person. But in a democracy, it is said as per what the law says. Let me take the case of Britain. Yes. It was said, yes, thank you. It was said that during COVID-19, that nobody should leave. But when Boris Johnson left, the party they had, he is paying for it. Okay. He is sanctioned for that. But how many Cameroonians have been sanctioned for embezzling the money that was given for us to fight this invisible hand called COVID-19? Okay. So you will realize that, you understand, so you will realize that it is not the issue of we thinking that democracy is not there. It's about the people getting the political education to bring their person to task. I said some days ago that when a government does something and you sit and you say thank you, or when you want the government to do something, you sit and you say I'm begging on the government, you are selling your rights, because as the constitution will put it, it is the duty of a government to ensure that there should be water. They should not provide water and you come and you praise them for the water provided. No. They should rather understand that if there is no water, they will not be elected. Look at what happened in France. Emmanuel Macron says, I understand that you guys who did not vote for Marine Le Pen, it's because she has a policy that could plunge our country somewhere. And I am going to respect your opinion. What does that mean? It means the reason why the people did not vote Marine Le Pen, he is simply going to give it to them. So they are already bringing him to task. They are bringing him to order. But when you come to other African countries, especially Cameroon, it is always in the name of A, in the name of B, in the name of that person. Okay. Whereas it ought to be in the name of the constitution. Okay. The head of the country always talks to Cameroonians and he will say that as the constitution gives him power. So why don't we use the constitution to operate within the country? And why do we use his own name to carry out activities within the country? So I think the lack of political education is the reason why most political parties and most politicians will want to maneuver over their people. And I'll still call on Fah Elvis here and Alex Nguepi and the rest. You guys have a lot of work to do. You need to educate the people. They need to know why they are voting and where do they take whosoever doesn't do what is right to. Okay. Televiewers, we'll take a short break, and after that we'll take on our second topic for today.
You're watching Prime Hour on My Media Prime Television, and we've been discussing why Africa has not developed 60 years after independence. And this time around, we are going to take on our second topic that has to do with indiscipline in political parties in Cameroon, as well as exclusion. Is this phenomenon an apt reflection of the Cameroonian society? That's what we shall be examining with our political analysts who are right here with us in the studio. We begin with Fah Elvis, who is the communications secretary to the CRM or political party of Professor Maurice Kamto. Fah Elvis, the second topic this evening, we are talking about indiscipline. Several militants of political parties have had to be sanctioned. You know, even a member of your own political party has been sanctioned 8 times within 6 months. We are asking, is this phenomenon an apt reflection of the Cameroonian society?
Well, first, let me talk about discipline. Every organization has its modus operandi. Just like international organizations, just so too local organizations. If you work at the United Nations, you don't just function at will because you have parameters under which you are recruited as a member of the UN. Member states of the African Union also have status quo that guides them in their operations. If you go to a local school around you, they have what they call DISCOM. Most of us who went to CPC Bali will know what is called DISCOM. It means that anytime you flout the laws, because when you come to school in Form 1, the first is that they give you you are made to understand the rules and regulations of the school. If you break bounds, this is your punishment. If you don't do this, this is your punishment. If you miss a class, this is your punishment, and all the like. That you are aware. Now, all of these things are for the sake of order in any organization. Even in your local jangi, in your house, if you borrow 10,000 francs and you don't give it when you're supposed to give, there's a fine for that. So, those parameters are put in place in order for our society to be in order. And that is the same analysis I'm taking into political parties. Yes. Now, you realize that if you have people, now you bring them together from different political backgrounds, sociological backgrounds, anthropological backgrounds, and you put them together. If you don't have a guiding mechanism, you get to a point where to control them, it will be another problem. That's why states have constitutions. Yes. Political parties have constitutions. And
yes,
so
they
forth,
have constitution, rules and regulations. Who respects them?
Now,
that's
when you have all of this, the aspects of the respect of the constitution now is based now on each party depending on how they adapt it. And in that case, you realize that in the function of each political party, they have the way through which they administer the respect of the constitution. It cannot be the same with party A, it cannot be the same with party B or party C. That's why we might carry on with comparative analysis in terms of party constitutions, but they vary and the application also vary. If you go to other aspects, just like the constitution in the country, they will tell you, for example, if we are in the constitution, let's talk about criminal code, for example, that once you kill somebody, you are liable to go in for it because you have committed murder. But then there are exceptional circumstances. For example, if you kill somebody in the course of self-defense, you discover that the way in which you will be charged will not be the same like somebody who sits and murders somebody just in cold blood like that. These are two different parameters we're talking about. Yes. And therefore, A killed, B killed, but since as circumstances vary, A will take life imprisonment, B will take 10 years imprisonment. Sometimes C will take 2 years imprisonment, but 3 of them have committed murder.
Many people have questioned the freedom of speech within political parties in Cameroon. Does it mean that if an individual hijacked a party and is not respecting the rules and regulation of that party, an individual hijack a party and is trying to derail the party from its original vision, they shouldn't talk, they shouldn't criticize the individual?
Now, these are two things here present. Freedom of speech is defined in relative terms. Lasha, there is a common saying, you can talk as you like, but know that when you talk as you like and it lands into trouble, you bear the consequences. It means that you are free to talk. Now, the aspect of freedom of speech is relative. What is the presentation? President Paul Biya falters in a country. How do I present it? If I say Paul Biya is a highway armed robber, he's a thief, he has done this. He has made an error. But my presentation now matters in the way I present what he has done. That's why I said that in each party, the rest of the application and the interpretation of its rules and regulations lies within the armpit of the party in question. I would tell you that any party that does not put in place disciplinary measures, should that party itself cannot govern. I am saying again, yes. We have more than 300 parties in Cameroon. If you have a party where Town comes in at will, he blows grammars in the air anyhow, they put him to order and say, no, Master, you should get out. And nothing is done. It means that if that same party is given leadership, the ministers may get on one day, and president says one, this man says two, and it goes in a disorder. That is what usually leads countries into civil war.
Let's take for example a case where a top official of a party is trying to trample upon the rights of a militant without the knowledge of the national president. In that case,
now let me answer that question because I know where you are driving to. Let me answer the question because I know where you are driving to. You see,
just answer your question.
Everything might have been cooked, but it's definitely until you hear the story from the horse's mouth.
Yes.
When a party militant at the base tells you that he's trampled on by a hierarchy, you are a journalist. I talk as an investigating journalist. You must be able to hear the both sides of the stories. Could it be that party militant A is overzealous and wants to override the principles of the party, and because he's put to order, he decides to start making utterances as if he wants to be trampled upon? It's a matter. Now, Lasha, if you are in an area, I keep telling you several times, Lasha.
Yes.
CRM is the only party, for example, whatever party in general, I want to give an example like my party as I'm the communication officer, is the only party that has the highest number of advocates in the country ever in the history of Cameroon.
It's a fact.
It's a fact.
We know that.
If we have this, do you think that in this kind of parameter, if a militant, for example, in the party is undergoing some sanctions, there must be a cause for that? Why militant A? Why not militant B? Can you tell me that it's a single militant, for example, who can rise up in a party and wants to prove Pontius Pilate? No. Something must be wrong somewhere. And that's where I call on journalists to come in. Because I am telling you now, we have filed a complaint to close to 7th press print now at the National Communication Council, who took delight in issues of the party and went as far. And as I'm saying, I know that President George Kubonkem Kalabose is the president. I know he will act accordingly. We are sending them with proofs and facts. Because when you pick up at the party, you wear a mark around them as a journalist. That's not a role of journalist. A role of journalist is what we call investigation. This thing has happened. You move to. You could move into me as a communication officer. I hear this thing has happened. What can you say? You get to the power. I hear what you understand, Lasha. When you compare these things, you'll be able to understand whether a militant who tells you that there is a party hierarchy who is trampling on is really for true.
Okay.
Character issues matter in politics, Lasha.
Okay.
If you have a character problem, there are some things that a party hierarchy cannot contain with members.
Okay.
And therefore, they must go through scrutiny. So you could be sanctioned 50 times within 12 months.
Okay.
Or is that something is definitely wrong?
Alex, before I ask you the question I'm supposed to ask you, what is a political party? I want you to tell me what a political party is before I get to the question I'm supposed to ask you.
Un parti politique, c'est une organisation privée. On va même dire une institution privée qui mène des activités qui vont impacter dans le public. Donc ce sont des gens qui se réunissent et qui décident de mettre sur pied une organisation afin de conquérir le pouvoir et d'exercer le pouvoir. L'objectif premier d'un parti politique est la conquête du pouvoir. Second, l'exercice. Troisième, conserver le pouvoir.
But I didn't hear you talk about the same ideology, people sharing the same ideology, because you cannot come together with diverse, you know, we are not having the same...
Donc, d'abord, vous vous réunissez.
Yes.
Et quand vous vous réunissez, donc, vous mettez sur pied votre formation politique, vous définissez une idéologie. C'est à partir de l'idéologie.
Which means that you guys have to move towards the same direction.
Je crois que c'est
Everybody has to be reasoning in the same direction.
Si vous ne me laissez pas m'exprimer comme d'autres, ça ne va pas marcher. Laissez-moi m'exprimer sur la question comme d'autres l'ont fait.
Go ahead.
Ok. Donc, vous mettez sur pied une idéologie. Et l'idéologie, généralement, les gens adhèrent dans les formations politiques à partir de l'idéologie. À partir de l'idéologie. Il y a malheureusement les formations politiques qui n'ont pas d'idéologie comme le RDPC. J'ai dit le RDPC, son idéologie.
No, we are not talking CPDM.
Non, je prends l'exemple.
We are just talking political parties.
Je prends l'exemple. Comme le RDPC n'a pas d'idéologie, ils vont vous dire que c'est le libéralisme communautaire. Le libéralisme communautaire est un programme politique. n'a pas d'idéologie. Le SDF a une idéologie, c'est la social-démocratie. Le MS a une idéologie, c'est le social-libéralisme, avec pour devise paix, travail, progrès. Donc ça, c'est l'idéologie du MRC. Le social-libéralisme et devise paix, travail, progrès. Non, justice, travail, progrès. Dans la justice est au devant de toutes choses. Et la formation politique est formée, exerce son pouvoir dans un territoire, dans un État, donc, et mettre sur pied un statut. Les statuts doivent être en conformité avec les lois de la République. C'est ça. C'est-à-dire que les statuts doivent respecter les lois et doivent être en conformité avec la Constitution.
Alex, let me ask you this question. Are militants of a political party supposed to respect the party's rules and regulations or answerable to the national president?
Oui, je vais
because we are seeing the cases of people who are sanctioned in Cameroon, they tend to respect with the national president, not the rules and regulations of the party.
Je souhaiterais donc que vous me décidez parce que à cette question, sans m'interrompre encore chaque fois, je voudrais bien m'exprimer sur la question parce que je comptais passer par cette question-là. Et c'est ce qu'il a dit sur cette question-là. Donc je veux donc dire qu'ils mettent sur pied une idéologie, ils mettent sur pied des statuts et des règlements intérieurs qui doivent être en conformité avec les lois de la République et la Constitution. Voilà pourquoi est-ce que ces statuts et ces règlements intérieurs sont envoyés au ministère de l'Intérieur qui vérifie la conformité. S'il y a un article qui n'est pas en conformité avec la Constitution et les lois de la République, le parti se doit de retirer. Donc, et je suis d'accord, quand vous êtes militant d'une formation politique, vous devez respecter l'idéologie, vous devez respecter les statuts, vous devez respecter les règlements intérieurs. Maintenant, la question se pose. C'est quoi donc...
Ce n'est pas le cas au Cameroun. On voit les gens respecter plutôt le président national.
Laissez-moi m'exprimer sur
cette question. On a vu ça avec le professeur.
Laissez-moi m'exprimer sur la question, parce que je suis concerné autant que M. Martaniam dit. Si je viens sur votre plateau et pas de la question, laissez-moi m'exprimer sur la question. Si vous m'interrompez pour me diriger, ça ne servira à rien. Parce que je suis quand même là personnellement.
Répondez à la question, M.
Donc, je suis d'accord qu'un militant d'une façon politique doit respecter l'idéologie du parti politique, de 1, doit respecter les statuts, de 2, doit respecter les règlements intérieurs. Ça, je suis parfaitement d'accord. Maintenant, c'est quoi donc le respect de l'idéologie? C'est quoi donc le respect des statuts? C'est quoi donc le respect des règlements intérieurs? Il s'avère que dans les formations politiques, plusieurs formations politiques camerounaises ont des règlements intérieurs qui ont des vides juridiques. Et comme les partis politiques sont formés sur la base des lois, lorsqu'il y a un vide juridique d'un règlement intérieur, d'un statut, on se réfère à la loi de la République pour trancher. De 1. Non, c'est ça qu'il s'agit. C'est-à-dire que les partis politiques, les partis politiques les statuts et les règlements intérieurs doivent être en conformité avec la Constitution.
Yes, I think
maintenant, non, laissez-moi, vous avez votre temps de répondre, parce que là, on me fait que me dire. Maintenant, je suis d'accord. Maintenant, que se passe-t-il? Je vais parler de mon cas personnellement. Parce que je dois parler de mon cas. Parce que mon cas est un exemple. C'est-à-dire que je suis dans une formation politique où j'étais suspendu.
You should make that very short, please.
Non, je ne peux pas parler de ça parce qu'il s'agit de mon cas.
I just hope that this is not a disciplinary committee.
Non, permettez-moi, s'il vous plaît.
Alex, I'll give you the floor. I am in charge here, Elvis. I am in charge.
Okay.
Alex, make your point. Make your point.
Je ne peux pas parler de mon cas.
No. No, we leave that. We cannot talk about that. We cannot talk about that. Fabrice.
Votre studio.
Je
ne parle pas de politique, ok?
Alex.
Vous ne pouvez pas parler d'un cas particulier ou de Niamdine, peu importe. Si Niamdine, écoutez, permettez-moi s'il vous plaît. Non, vous ne voulez pas.
Alex, you cannot come and disrespect my.
Le professeur Niamdine est sur les plateaux de télévision tous les jours. Et quand il est là, il est concerné par l'actualité. Et il explique son cas. Je ne peux pas être invité ici chez vous, vous ne parlez pas de mon cas.
C'est impossible.
Yeah, but
Mais on est où?
but I think
this
is not a
I've asked you this question. I've asked you that. No,
je dis ceci, c'est pas mon
you
cas.
cannot do that. No, that would be disrespect
Parce que vous êtes en
of
train
the
de m'empêcher
people
de
sitting here and the televiewers watching
Pourquoi
us.
voulez-vous que je parle vraiment politique parce que
No, Fabrice Lena, I come back to you. Fabrice Lena,
it's very.
Okay,
it's
go
very.
to studio.
It is.
Où je parle
Monsieur Alex.
Vous ne pouvez pas m'amener sur le studio.
Alex, can you respect yourself,
Ça c'est
please?
débat, non. Ça c'est.
It's a debate. I will give you the floor, Alex.
Il y a une règle de débat ici.
Alex, I am in charge here. You cannot tell me what to do. Please, Alex. No, I will not tolerate that from you. Please, can you be quiet? I will ask you. Please, Alex, I'll give you the floor. I'll give. Please.
Non, mais si tu dois pas parler, c'est tout.
Please.
Et je vais dans un plateau.
Desmond, please, transition. Desmond,
Toi.
let's take a short break. Televiewers of my media Prime TV, you are watching Prime R. This evening is hot in the studio. As we know, we are talking about political parties in Cameroon, the respect of rules and regulation, why militants of most political formations in the country are being excluded from their party. I come back to Fabrice Lena. Fabrice Lena, before we took this short break, we were talking about what is happening within political parties in Cameroon. And this time around, how much respect do we give to rules and regulation in Cameroon?
Well, I will talk on what I know. I started militating for party politics in 2011. That's in 2011 presidential elections, when I admired the courage of the former national president of the Popular Action Party, Justice Aya Paul Abine, when in 2008 he stood alone to refuse the voting of the bill at the parliament to uplift presidential mandate and make it renewable unlimited. And since then, I have been for the Popular Action Party from 2011 till now, that gradually from a militant to a municipal secretary general to national communication secretary to the secretary general that I am today. I believe that if there is a political party in Cameroon that Cameroonians need to emulate, Cameroonians need to see the reflection of the culture of competitive politics, the culture of democracy, the culture of respect of hierarchy, the culture of independence and autonomy, the culture of making your voice to be heard, then I can say the Popular Action Party is a typical example. A typical example in the sense that from the transition from Justice Aya Paul Abine to Njang Denis Tabe, we have had militants in the Popular Action Party who at some point in time go out of party agenda, party rules, maybe in TV communication or in their activities. But then we always have, I think, one of the best mechanisms of solving this so that it do not appear controversial to Cameroonians that admire our political party and leadership for a better Cameroon. And what I have always observed as a young politician in Cameroon is that out of the several or hundreds of political parties in Cameroon, there are so many that there is serious problem of leadership, you know. And I always tell people that in trying to fight dictatorship, make sure that you do not become a dictator yourself. Because, why do I say so? There are many political parties that from the 90s till present, they have had just a single national president, And some of these national presidents, according to their constitution, they have a one term of office renewable ones, which is varying between 5 to 10 years, and you see some of them still staying up till more than the normal time that their constitution stipulates. Once the leader of a political party stays more than the time required by the constitution of that party to stay in power, already you are a bad example. And there are so many political parties that we know in this country that they have done so. And that's why I still come back to say kudos to Justice Paul Abine. He took up leadership of the PAP in 2010, and PAP's constitution stipulates 5 years renewable ones, which was supposed to be a period of 10 years. Normally, Justice Aya's term of office was supposed to finish in 2020. But he let it go in 2019 when he discovered that in Cameroon, many political parties and political institutions are not giving opportunity to the youth. And he said, no, our constitution, first of all, encourages 60% of leadership to youth. And our constitution encourages that when your mandate is up, you have to give it up to the next person to follow up. So I think I do not really, at the position of the Popular Action Party, have controversies of disrespect. We are always managing issues of the party.
Fabrice, what is your opinion on this issue of militants of political parties taking their party's internal problems or quarrels to the public eye?
I will say that there is, I will look at two fronts. First, at the level of the party's leadership, there is a problem.
No, but
yes, I will say it in two points. Yes. Well, let me learn. I have worked in collaboration with so many other opposition political parties. In 2020, we did a joint manifestation with the CRM political party, with I think it was that's the most remarkable political party, but I think there were about 6 political parties that we came together. I've worked closely with the political party of Alanka Wala CPP. I've worked closely with so many other political parties, and I can tell you that sometimes when a militant decides to take affair of the party to the public, it comes at the level of the leadership. The national president of a political party or a chairman of a political party is like the president of a republic of a country, who is the first citizen supposed to be the guarantor of respect of right, of rule of law, respect of internal rules, respect of the constitution.
And the national president is not aware.
That's funny. I don't think that in a population of less than 30 million people, with more than 300 political parties, and a political party not possessing up to more than 10 million militants, you will tell me that the national president should not be aware of issues coming up in the party that is crucial, as in raising eyebrows in the public. So that should be a problem of effective and that should be a problem of ineffective leadership at the level of the president himself. You cannot tell me that something is happening in Cameroon at the level of PAP and Jean Denis is not aware. You know. So what I want to let me come.
I will give you time. J'ai pas terminé la question.
Can he conclude now? Can he land? Can he land? Alex, can he land?
I was patient.
He was patient. Can he land?
Let me just conclude, please. So like I said, I've observed keenly in the Cameroon context that there is a lot of polemics when it comes to giving that trust to political parties by Cameroonian people based on that skepticism, that doubt that comes from the leadership of the parties. So on the other side of the militants, there are some militants who are, I can put it in the term overzealous. Overzealous in the sense that they take party issues are so sensitive, especially in a complex society like ours, Cameroon context, where we are fighting dictatorship, where we are fighting a governance by high instruction, where we are fighting a system that has been rooted in, you can understand, CBDM, which is the party in power, was simply transformed and never created like the PAP that was created with a creation number in 1991 and so many other political parties. So to fight this system, you have to be discreet, you have to be cautious, you have to be... I think I want to go in the same light with my brother G. Please, if you want to engage in politics, please, first of all, know what is politics. make research about being a politician, and please read documentaries and rub your minds with intellectuals so that you can understand where you are engaging to. I buy with you 100% that Cameroonians and many African countries are unable to stand up to their government because they are ignorant, and the few enlightened politicians are taking advantage of the ignorance and the naivety of the people to do whatever thing they want to do. And most politicians themselves do not measure up to the competence of certain positions they hold in political parties. And I would say that this is because of political education. And the point where we understand this, when we understand this, we are all going to get to that level of maturity where we usher ourselves to competitive politics, to effective and efficient politics, and perhaps Cameroon will be in that federal structure where people are given the opportunity according to their will, not because they feel to do politics, but because they are able, capable, and willing to do politics.
Alex Nguepi, do we even know our constitution? Do we respect the rules and regulations?
Je pense que vous faites tout pour que je ne parle pas de la question. Et je suis quelqu'un qui prône la liberté d'expression. Laissez-moi m'exprimer.
No, Alex,
je ne suis pas. Laissez-moi m'exprimer.
Come back to that.
S'il vous plaît,
yes.
s'il vous plaît.
Go ahead and make your point. Go ahead.
Laissez-moi m'exprimer.
Yes.
J'ai dit, un militant doit respecter les statuts de son parti. Un militant doit respecter les règlements intérieurs des formations politiques. Le problème qui se passe, c'est quoi? Au Cameroun, vous avez la plupart des formations politiques, surtout dites de l'opposition, parce que déjà le RDPC ne respecte pas, on sait déjà ça. Le cas Yamdi est clair. Donc les gens prennent des décisions sur d'autres militants, sans même se référer au statut du parti, sans se référer au statut du parti, et quand ils ont pris des décisions qui vont impacter votre vie politique, alors on dit respecter la décision. Mais encore on dit respecter les statuts. Et personne n'entre dans les statuts faire un débat avec vous. On vous dit non, ça définit du parti.
Alex, that's the reason why I asked you. I asked you to
define
what a political party is. You didn't get the definition correctly. I asked you to define what a political party is.
Laissez-moi m'exprimer.
You are talking.
Laissez-moi m'exprimer, ça me tient à cœur cette question-là. Je crois que nous sommes deux sur l'actualité. Alex Nguepi, quand il va sur un plateau qui parle de cette question, laisse s'exprimer. Vous n'allez pas m'inviter sur votre plateau sur cette question-là et m'empêcher de m'exprimer. Ça, c'est des choses que je ne tolère pas du tout. On parle de liberté d'expression. Hein. Et ce que je dis en tant que m'engage.
Okay.
Et nous sommes ça pour dire
your capacity as a politician, yes.
Maintenant, donc, je vais donc dire, la plupart du temps, les gens parlent du respect des statuts, mais ne vous dites pas en quoi ça concerne. Les gens pensent, dans l'opposition, qu'il suffit de critiquer le gouvernement, mais ils refusent la critique en interne. Ils vont vous dire, un cas très simple, hein.
But how can you be criticizing an ideology, a political party that you share in the vision and the ideology of the political party?
What is the manner of you are even abusing?
J'arrive donc.
From all this knowledge on air, imagine the kind of militants people want to do in the political party to allow you to function like that.
La plupart, comme le MRC, c'est le social-libéralisme.
Yes.
Donc ça parle de la démocratie, et puis d'expression. L'homme au cœur de la démocratie. Et je dis donc,
where are you supposed to do to express yourself? Is it in the public space or within the political party? That's what I'm asking you.
Allow him to.
Pourquoi on ne veut pas que je m'exprime?
Because for me, I think he should talk.
Lan.
Allez-y. Vous m'avez interrompu, mais ce n'est pas la no.
Donc, est-ce que les gens dont laissent les militants s'exprimer à l'interne? Je ne pense pas. Parce que pour un cas très simple, depuis que j'étais victime de ce qu'on appelle une injustice, en aucun moment, dès que j'ai fait des recours, en aucun moment, que j'ai tort ou raison, en aucun moment il y a une discussion interne. En aucun moment j'ai été entendu par qui que ce soit. En aucun moment j'ai été convoqué. Or, le principe des libertés camerounaises voudrait que, même si vous avez tort, on vous envoie une convocation. Je dis bien, en aucun moment, Alex Nguepi a été convoqué. Non, permettez-moi s'il vous plaît m'exprimer. Comment on parle donc des statuts du parti. Nos statuts sont clairs dessus, on vous convoque. C'est quel nos statuts. Comment peut-on donc juger un militant sans le convoquer? J'ai dit, je mets quiconque au défi de sortir ma convocation. Ils n'ont pas.
Alex,
je suis le seul représentant sur le plateau. Je dis le seul mandataire. Si un homme politique entre dans l'affaire de MSC, moi je ne ferai pas ça. Je vous dis, le seul mandataire MSC, c'est moi ici.
Ce sont ces patates.
Si vous parlez de parfait, ils sont dans le plateau. C'est moi qui ai le pouvoir de pardon. Je dis
la preuve c'est que
Alex, don't you think that there is an attitude problem? A militant being sanctioned 8 times in 6 months. Is that not a problem?
Ok, alors j'arrive donc. Ok, il est sanctionné 10 fois. Même 10 fois. Et le militant vous dit, chaque fois qu'il est sanctionné, il n'a même entendu. On l'a même convoqué. Il a fait le recours en interne. Vous n'avez pas jugé. Et quand il est sanctionné, vous prenez sa sanction sur Facebook pour l'humilier. Et quand il répond, il ne doit pas répondre. Voilà la question qu'il faut poser aux gens. Bon, vous pouvez sanctionner un militant.
Did you investigate to find out this?
Je dis donc, je dis Laurent Coman sur Facebook. Dans mon cas, Daline Kouébou, elle m'a dit, il y a qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire dans notre plateforme. Maintenant, j'arrive donc, n'est-ce pas?
Oui,
vous voyez l'homme politique, reste l'homme politique. Vous voyez donc la dictature, parce qu'on nous regarde, la dictature qui se passe dans le RDPC pour le peuple camerounais, se passe même dans les partis de l'opposition. Comment quelqu'un, un cadre d'une formation politique, qui chaque jour parle du RDPC,
à mon avis, n'est pas RDPC.
Sans être du RDPC. Un Camerounais du parti RDPC. Je veux que l'espace. Je veux que les Camerounais comprennent à quel point est-ce qu'au MRC, il y a une dictature qui est imposée au MRC. C'est-à-dire qu'on dit, vous, journalistes, que
what is the national president saying? What is the national president saying?
C'est pas le problème du président national.
What are you talking about?
Ce que je reproche, c'est pourquoi je veux avoir la sanction. À cause de ce genre de comportement, Nguepi est tort, Nguepi mérite d'être convoqué et entendu. Et je n'ai jamais été convoqué. Maintenant, faut chuter.
The national president is listening to you. And your communication. Yes, we are not judging anyone.
Faut chuter, monsieur.
The communication officer is here. He is following you, listening to you. He is listening. And you will take your message to Professor Maurice Kamto.
Faut chuter. Discipline politique, pas chuter. Ok. Demandez à ce monsieur. It is called God to an intern.
We are not in court here. Alex,
c'est ça qu'il faut faire. Maintenant, pour chuter. Je vais donner sanction pour moi. Et sans même être entendu.
Yes.
Même sans sanction, je le mérite. Mais je demande mon droit d'être entendu.
Yes,
je demande mon droit d'être convoqué. Maintenant.
Alex, can you Alex, please. Chachi, please. Land, you have 30 seconds.
Ok, pour chuter. Je vais dire, ma dernière suspension, ceux qui m'ont...
Alex, you have 30 seconds. I will take the mic.
Fais-moi 30 secondes pour ce qu'il a dit.
Yes.
Ce qu'il a fait tout à l'heure, il a parlé des statuts. Au MRC, celui qui convoque la médiation régionale, c'est le secrétaire régional du MRC, article 45. Il a ça avec lui. C'est clair et net.
Nous sommes au paquet de
je sais que chuter. Le secrétaire régional du Sud est décédé. Alors comment ont-ils pu donc convoquer quand celui qui doit vous convoquer est décédé? Comment ont-ils pu se réunir quand celui qui est chargé, qui est censé réunir dire à M. Fah Elvis, M. Fah Elvis, ceux qui accusent le gouvernement, c'est la même chose qui sont en train de faire.
Yes, Alex.
Un parti respecte les militants.
Alex, yes, you have heard. You have been listening to Professor Maurice Kamto is watching.
Ce n'est pas le problème de Maurice Kamto sur cette question-là.
Okay.
Il y a une question qui doit se prononcer.
You want to add something?
Yes, of course. These are things I talk about political education. And if you observe what is happening on the platform, it's basically the lack of political education. It is highly lacking in some of these political parties. The voter apathy being caused in most African countries is not coming from the ruling party. It often comes from the opposition party. The lack of building themselves together on its own is a very big problem. Okay? So I want to believe that if these opposition parties are telling the world and Cameroonians, for example, let us take the case of Cameroon, that they want us to give them the chance, the opportunity to govern us. And if this is the attitude they put in the public, then it makes it very difficult, quite complex, to access the political landscape, because the man down there doesn't want to see his own head making very funny comments on Facebook, on mainstream medias and the rest. Every political party has an internal rule and regulation, including its constitution or article of association. And these are things that they use in governing themselves. These are the things that they use in bringing one another to other. But when these things are not respected and they are brought before the public, I want to take the case of Masagan Nyamdi, whom the papers are reporting quite often these days. You will realize that before the judgment of him being expelled from the party, there was an outing of him telling the world what has happened to him, the way things are going. And you cannot talk about a party and you say you have your allegiance to the head. If you have your allegiance to the head, they will still not respect that party. You are putting the entire party down. Yes. Because the party is not the head. If you are saying that the party is the head, so where is democracy?
The truth is that we cannot be criticizing the system of high instruction and practicing it.
That's it.
We cannot be criticizing creation of strong institutions.
Yes, and we are supporting,
and we are instead creating strong men.
That's it. You get it.
This is a doctrine that we should completely remove in Cameroon.
Thank you. So you get it. So I think that the voter apathy, the political apathy, which we are facing in Cameroon, is widely being created by some of the opposition parties and the ruling party. Take, for example, if you look at the case, yes, I'm coming. You have given the mic to almost everybody.
We are running out of time.
Well, it's unfortunate that the mic had been with them for over, I mean, the time that I cannot even mention it.
And just land, make
just
your
for
point.
a few seconds. And so I think that what we need to do in Cameroon, the sanctioning of members of political party is very normal. A country that operates without a constitution is doomed to fail. As such, what these militants who are unsanctioned need to do is they have to, yes, they have to understand. You take the constitution of your party and the constitution of the country, but the constitution of your party, which is that association that brings you guys together, it is more stronger at that point in solving your problem than that of the republic, because the party has a provision to expel you. You could take them to court and claim them, but when they expel you from that party, you will still not be there and the party will still be there. So what is most important is that issues, when you have your internal squabbles, you have to fix it. Let me share with you, please. Now, in the US, we have the GOP. The GOP are like the watchdog of the Republican Party. And the moment you make a statement that they don't resonate with, they will tell the world immediately that this is not from them. Let us take the case of Joe Biden. He made a statement, please. He made a statement concerning Vladimir Putin. And the American people and the Democrat Party said, no, these are statements that are coming from Joe Biden.
Not the American
president. Not the Americans. So you understand that there is a dichotomy. And if these things are not respected, you will cause the people not to see reasons. You will always make them not to see reasons why they have to vote. Because I cannot openly give my vote if I should observe such which has just happened on the platform to any of such political party. I will be doomed to fail. You get it? So I want to still call on these political parties. The political education I'm talking about, they should bear in mind that they themselves need to get it. Every party has a philosophy. If you do not resonate with those who set up that philosophy, bear in mind that at the foundational level, you were probably not there. And if you are coming in, you should also respect the rules and regulations. But my plea is that lack of political education. A lot of persons are moving into political parties because the leaders have very charismatic way of bringing them into the party, and they don't even understand the constitution upon entry. As a matter of fact, the moment you indicate your interest that you want to belong in a political party, the first thing they need to give to you is the internal rules and regulation and the article of association. Because that is the document that will tell you whether you can accommodate yourself there. Because at that point, you are the one to accommodate yourself. Meaning, if you have a bad attitude, if you have a good attitude, you should look at where you have to fit in with this attitude. So in a nutshell, please,
thank you very much for coming.
We should be able to respect the rules and regulation governing us. If we are saying that we don't want on the high instruction, and we are saying that the state or the government in place should respect the constitution of the Republic of Cameroon, we cannot be indifferent with political parties who doesn't want to respect their article of association.
Thank you, Mr. Lukanji, for coming. Fah Elvis, your last word?
Yeah, my last word is simple, that I think we are here to talk on a topic about indiscipline in political parties and not a particular party.
Of course. Yes.
I'm sure I've been trying to move within that armpit. I get my brother Lucas trying to talk about political education. I think that what he's saying, the parties are doing already. It's just because he's not a member of the parties. Probably I know about what PAP is doing in terms of political education because I'm closer to this SG. They know what we do. I in person organize political communication within my party. It's not a new phenomenon. It's just like in any case, you will get
some of their militants are not still educated enough.
No, not say some of the militants. How many are complaining? You should ask that question. Because when we are moving in the particular issue, we are taking a part of the topic in general. And when we get some of these things, you understand that the attitude of somebody is seen in platforms like this.
Yes.
Because I am not here to treat internal issues of the party. I don't think even PAP can do that. They cannot take the issue. They have where they treat it. This platform I'm coming today is because we're talking about indiscipline in political parties in general.
Yes.
We're not taking it in a particular context. But if somebody here tells me that he is a politician, now to move further, just to conclude, you see, the issue is that I know where my right begins and where it ends. If it were part of our constitution, Mr. Moderator, that we could discuss internal issues outside. So I think that all we do is that you will discover that the characters of persons punish themselves. And all parties, I would tell you, without fear or favor, that with PAP, I don't talk about any party that's not here. PAP cannot tolerate if you don't match within their rules and regulations. And that's just what we are simply doing. And therefore, if we want to be leaders of tomorrow and to head a country, we must show example. That's what we're doing. So special thanks to all those who are watching us wherever they are. And we move on. And be disciplined. We will continue to anybody who cannot be disciplined. We will discipline such a person.
Fah Elvis, Fabrice Lena, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lasha. I'm grateful we had a heated but interesting debate. I want to greet my dear friend in Yaoundé, Haira Berili. She's having a wonderful place there at Bastos. I want to also greet Bana Sema Ivor, who is always there in Bonaberi to help us, the militants of PAP with lodging issues. I want to greet our national president for staying put throughout the program till now, and to say to our honorary former national president, Justice Aya Paul, that let the oracle keep it up and see us through this journey of seeking to change Cameroon. And to all my international friends and politicians in the different African countries, we are together, and together we will change the narrative of Cameroon.
Thank you for coming. Alex, your last word.
Oui, merci pour l'émission, même si on s'est laissé emporter. Je vais seulement dire au peuple camerounais que nous avons besoin, le peuple camerounais a besoin de démocratie. La démocratie, je suis d'accord avec votre analyse. La démocratie doit d'abord se vivre au sein des formations politiques. Et quand on a exercé la démocratie au sein des formations politiques, on même par la suite, on l'exporte pour le proposer au peuple camerounais. Il ne faut pas qu'on pense que la démocratie, on va l'exercer quand on sera aux affaires. On le vit à l'intérieur des formations politiques. Et c'est la faiblesse des partis politiques dits de l'opposition au Cameroun. Parce qu'ils pensent toujours qu'ils vont exercer la démocratie quand ils seront aux affaires. Lorsque les formations politiques camerounaises doivent respecter les statuts, doivent respecter la loi du Cameroun, doivent respecter la constitution. Lorsqu'un cadre d'une formation politique camerounaise prend une décision contre un militant, et si le militant se plaint, Les mécanismes internes qui permettent d'entendre le militant doivent être rapidement activés.
Okay.
Conformément, permettez-moi, conformément au statut.
There's no time. We,
conformément
20
au
seconds,
statut.
20 seconds.
Donc, mais quand ce n'est pas activé, quand les militants portent plainte, sont sanctionnés, quand les militants sont sanctionnés et qu'ils font des recours en interne et qu'on attend 6 mois sans leur juger, alors on les radicalise. Ça donne ce spectacle-ci.
Okay.
Donc, les partis politiques doivent comprendre cela.
Yes. My last word will be going to Cameroonians. I will still call them Cameroonians and Africans, please. We have to build Africa. I'm a builder. I want us to build Africa. If we have had persons who are failing us, we should not fail ourselves. We still have that energy. We still have that knowledge. We still have the people around us. And I would like to end by calling on everybody in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. I know it has been tough. Schools resumed today, Monday, and it was unfortunate that the ghost town was not possible. It was not possible for these areas to go to school. But I want to say that, please, I want to make an appeal further to the SAC and to everybody who is within these regions. Please, we need to have our children educated. I want to call on the staffs of Rere Habet. I want to applaud them with their wonderful work. They are doing quite a lot. They are struggling to rehabilitate some of these children whom are the spoils of this war, not because they wanted it, but because of where they are today. So recover and rehabilitate for better tomorrow. I would like to call on everyone, the guardians, the parents, and the communities where we are operating, that we should not keep the children in the house. We should please think of how they need to get a book and a pen, because that is what they need. If we are talking about political education, if they are not knowledgeable enough, they will fall into pits that will not help them, and it will not help the economy of the country. Thank you very much. My last word will be going to the governor of the Southwest region. I want to call on the head of the Southwest region to support every idea which we have on the ground. As we make appeals on the other hand, we should make appeals on the other hand, because I believe that it is only together that we can build the entire Southwest region. Thank you.
That's it, televiewers. Thank you so much for taking our time to watch the very heated debate out here on My Media Prime Television. Hopefully, we'll be with you tomorrow for yet another edition of Prime Hour. The program was produced by Desmond Akeba, supervision Leona. I have been Lasha Kingsley for presentation. Bye-bye from this end.